Ladies and gentlemen, Grand Risings, and welcome to this little video on how to understand LTV CAC, aka the economic engine behind a business. Now, this video is going to be useful for anyone who's established and running a business and spending any money on marketing. Useful for entrepreneurs as well, beginning their journeys in the entrepreneurial world, and of course, any marketers out there in a company managing the marketing responsible for performance. And so at the end of this video, my promise to you is that you will understand firstly what LTV CAC is, why it's important, how to calculate it so you can understand what yours is, and ultimately what a good LTV CAC ratio is as well. Now, of course, you should never trust random strangers on the internet, so a very useful question to be asking yourself right now is, who the flipping heck is this guy? And let me briefly introduce myself. My name is Elliot. I am based out of London and I love golf, nature, biohacking, all that kind of good stuff. But my core thing is that I run a company called Botters, and it's a digital growth agency where we build customer acquiring machines for a whole bunch of super cool businesses. We've spent loads and loads of money on ads because that's our primary mechanism in which we do this. And as a result, we know a thing or two about LTV CAC. I am lucky enough to get to travel around and speak about this topic because I'm a nerd and love it so much. And just to further bring a little bit of evidence, so in 2023, these are some snapshots from our Google Ads and Meta Ads agency accounts. We spent about 1.16 million on Google Ads, about 1.58 on this particular Facebook ad account as well, meaning a total of 2.74 spent. And across our portfolio of 14 clients, we generated over £59 million in revenue for them. And so that gave us on average, total 21.5 return on ad spend, meaning every pound we invested on behalf of our clients generated them, on average, £21.5 back. And again, those are 2023 figures. Of course, it's 2024 now. So far this year, here's a snapshot. We've spent about 600K on Google, about 700K on Meta, meaning up until this point, the 12th of May, we've spent about £10,000 per day on ads. And so again, just to add a bit of, hopefully, validity to what we're doing, we're deep in the trenches. We do this quite a lot. By any stretch, we're still a small fry in this game, don't get me wrong, but hopefully this will be useful for people out there who are spending money on advertising and want to understand this hopefully very core and powerful metric. So without further ado, let's dive into the real meat of this, understanding the LTV CAC. Now, as a performance marketer, there's all sorts of metrics that we use that are useful to assess how our marketing's going. And as I just showed you, the return on ad spend is a very classic one. But I was fortunate enough to fly out to Las Vegas about 2 weeks ago and spend some time at acquisition.com for a scaling workshop led by the acquisition.com team, and Alex and Layla Hormozi were there as well, two absolute G's. And anyway, a core part of that was running through all of how they value a business, what drives value to it, and LTV CAC came up, and that was really my inspiration for the newsletter I wrote about this and also this video, because they described it very much as the economic engine behind every single business. And it's going to be tough to grow a business sustainably and properly if you don't know this, and therefore if you don't know it, it's hard to set about allocating your resources so that you can properly improve it. So to begin to demystify it, LTV stands for lifetime value, and CAC stands for customer acquisition cost. And so your LTV CAC is a ratio, and it's a critical indicator of your business. And in truth, it's one of the very first things an investor would look at. And even if you're not looking to sell your business, you still want to have a good one, because investors buy great businesses, and therefore if you run a great business, it's going to be great for you anyway. And it's expressed as a ratio. So it might be like 3-to-1, 5-to-1, 6-to-1, etc. And what it shows us is for every dollar or pound that's spent on advertising, how much do we actually make back in gross profit? And so understanding this ratio is a gateway to identifying the common constraints in your business. Because again, what I learned from Alex, he's a big believer in the theory of constraints. And so the theory of constraints is the idea that any business will grow up until the point of its current constraint and then no further. And so as a business leader, your job is to identify what the current constraint is and then allocate your resources to go and remove that constraint. As a result, business will grow up until it hits another constraint, and then you identify that, rinse and repeat, and so on. And LTV CAC is a very common one, and it yields us a lot of good insight that can help identify your constraints and obviously grow a business. So, how to actually calculate it? Well, there's two metrics here, obviously, LTV CAC, LTV and CAC. So let's start with the lifetime value, the LTV. And so there's a few ways of doing this. Some businesses will do this with revenue, but I prefer to use gross profit, as this is a more useful measure of, okay, for every pound we're spending, how many pounds in terms of gross profit are we getting back? And so your gross profit being whatever the price of goods you're selling minus what it costs you to deliver those goods. Your cost of goods sold, abbreviated to COGS. Once you understand what your gross profit is, we simply then calculate LTV by taking our gross profit figure and multiplying it by the number of lifetime purchases. So, for example, if on average a customer buys from us 5 times, we would take the price, multiply it by 5. If they only buy from us once in their whole entire life, it's a one-off thing, then again, you'd multiply it by 1. Now, the time frame you can use for that is up to you, but I would literally typically just look at a sensible period. Maybe it's a year, maybe it's 2 years. Take the total number of orders or sales and divide that by the total number of unique customers, and that's going to give you this figure. Once we've got our LTV, we then need our CAC, or our customer acquisition costs, and I use this interchangeably with CPA, cost per acquisition. They basically mean the same thing. And CAC, we get that by taking our total advertising spend across any and all platforms. So if you're spending on Facebook, Instagram, Google, etc., add it all up, and then we're going to divide it by the number of new customers that it generated us in that same period. It's important to just use new customers here and not your repeat customers, because we want to make sure we measure how much we spend to acquire a new customer, because all of the value from the repeat customers is already factored in here, because we factor in the multiple purchases across the lifetime, right? So we don't want to double account for it. Those simple calculations net you your LTV CAC. So to bring this all to life, here's a very simple example. Imagine I sell headphones for £100. That is the price. My cost of goods sold are £25. Therefore, to calculate my gross profit, I take my £100 price minus the 25, and that gives me £75 gross profit per pair of headphones that I sell. Now, being headphones, my customers on average buy 1.5 times in their whole life. That's because not many people buy headphones more than once. Occasionally they'll do a bulk order for some family members, gifts, maybe some replacements, but generally they're not buying them that much. So to work out my LTV, I take my gross profit figure and I times it by the number of repeat purchases, and that gives me, in this case, 75 times 1.5, £112.50. Now to work in Now to work out the customer acquisition cost side of it, well, last year I spent £100 advertising across Meta, Google, and even some TV ads, a bit old school, and I sold a total of 5,000 customers. Therefore, I divide my ad spend by my total number of new customers, and that gives me a £20 customer acquisition cost. So to then express this as the ratio, it would be the £112.50 lifetime value, £20 customer acquisition cost gives me 112.5 over 20, which again, we now just do some quick maths, express it down as a ratio by just dividing them, and it means I've got an LTV CAC of 5.6 to 1. So what this tells me is for every £1 I spend on advertising, I make £5.6 in gross profit. You see, it's really that easy. But the implications of this are profound, because now it means flipping heck. That is a good LTV CAC ratio. Let's go crank up this advertising. You can even rerun this calculation for each of the platforms, because the LTV CAC for customers on Meta might be different to Google, and you might want to start reinvesting your advertising budget and spending more on the places where it's more efficient as well. What is a good LTV CAC? That is a very good question. 10 to 1 is like unbelievable. Anything above that, you're basically printing money. And at this point, you become extremely attractive to investors. So your actual multiple you would get goes up significantly if this is an LTV CAC that you've got. At my business, Botters, we're currently around 6 to 1, which again is super, super solid. 3 to 1 is like your baseline minimum. Anything lower than this, as I say here, is an indicator that something's wrong with the business model. And this can be quite eye-opening for a lot of businesses, because in my agency we work with a certain type of business. They're normally quite mature, doing 7 figures in revenue and have high average order values. And when I speak to a lot of businesses, 9 out of 10 that I speak to, we don't end up doing any work with. And one of the primary reasons for that is because when I quiz them about the commercials behind the business, because I need to gauge an understanding of these numbers to determine whether or not we can actually do a job and generate them customers through ads effectively. And a lot of businesses, the numbers just don't stack up. And if your LTV CAC is so low, it means it's very hard to go out there and spend money at scale to acquire customers. And more often than not, it is a business model problem. And so that's why looking at your pricing, actually increasing the price that you're able to charge, whether it is by just increasing it or adding additional value, can be very helpful. But also any elements of repeat purchases can completely change the game in a business. And similarly, just what you can do in terms of cross-sells, upsells and ascensions to other stuff, that can help massively. Because for a lot of businesses, when they're advertising, truth be told, little truth for you, they don't make any money on the initial purchase, because their customer acquisition cost is the same as their initial purchase. But because they then monetize them through repeat purchases or ascensions and upsells, they're able to then become very profitable. And that's how big businesses grow. Hopefully this was useful. And here at Bodders, we use lots of AI. And so you can tell this was all from a newsletter that I recently wrote. And I've created an AI prompt that actually enables you to calculate your business's LTV CAC ratio. So you take this prompt, you can screenshot if you want, and just paste it into ChatGPT or whatever AI you're using. It's going to ask you 5 questions and you'll give it some numbers, and then it will run the calculations and you'll have your LTV CAC sorted for you. Now, of course, I'm happy to send you the prompt if you want. The easiest way, just find me on Instagram, ElliotJB, DM me LTV or something like that, and I'll just ping you the prompt and you can get using it. So I hope you found this useful. Please like, share, comment, subscribe, all that juicy stuff. I'll be releasing some more of these informational style videos, just sharing some of the ways in which we look at growing businesses within our business, hopefully to just share some useful insights, and who knows, maybe there might be some good potential partnerships and collaborations that come out of it in the future. But nonetheless, have a fantastic day. Appreciate you watching, and I'll see you later.